Hello, everybody. It is me, Coach Gina with Run with Gina, and I am here with Laura McQueen. She is a sports nutritionist, and I'm so excited to pick her brain. She doesn't know this. Well, she does know that I met her through the health mindset coaching certification. But what she doesn't know is that when we were doing the meet and greet, and she said she was a sports nutritionist, there I was taking a picture of her name so that I could do something with her in the future because I thought it could be a great collaboration. Laura, thanks for coming on. If you could just tell the viewers a little bit about you, your background, who you work with, and go from there.
Absolutely. I'm Laura McQueen. I am a runner, I am a cyclist, strength training, all the things, but I help endurance athletes with evidence-based sports nutrition and behavior change tools. All of that is to really, similar to how you work, Gina, is to keep the athlete healthy, keep the athlete performing. I have been in sports nutrition for close to 10 years. And honestly, one of the things that got me here was I almost went to physical therapy school. I was really interested in how nutrition supported injuries and rehabilitation. So the fact that we're having this conversation today is quite perfect. Rehabilitation nutrition, I don't think is something that's heavily talked about or even thought about, and not even just in rehabbing an injury, but also in injury prevention. So our nutrition plays such an important role in how we perform, how we recover, how we're able to wake up the next day and do it all again.
That's awesome. So you actually are giving everybody the topic of this discussion, which is the role of nutrition in injury. As you know, I work with runners, training them for half and full marathons, and my roster has 20-year-olds to 77-year-olds, and I want to give them the least amount of load to achieve their performance goals and enjoy running for a lifetime. So I do talk to them about nutrition. I have my precision nutrition certification, as well as my strength training, my run coaching, all kinds of certifications that seem to each one covers nutrition a little bit. Of course, I haven't gone as deep into the research as you have because I don't have a master's degree in sports nutrition, so I'm glad you're here with us. But I was listening to a podcast, and this is when I said I have to talk to Laura about injury, the role of nutrition in injury, because I'm always talking to my runners about nutrition for performance, nutrition for recovery. And we could argue, well, recovery means we're going to stay out of the injury cycle, but that's not what they're thinking. They're thinking recovery so that they can wake up the next morning and lace up their shoes and go pound the pavement. So this podcast I was listening to, they were saying it was a registered dietitian, and she was saying, coaches, you cannot tell your runners you just need to eat more because that doesn't land with them, especially if they have a history of eating disorders. And over the years, in the 11 years that I've been run coaching, I have had several people tell me they have a history of eating disorders. And then, of course, I have the ones that it is my observation that they have disordered eating, which is it's different, but there is some overlap. And so it made me think of somebody that has told me in the past that they had a eating disorder. And it was the night before her marathon. This was years ago. And I said, what's for dinner? And she told me, well, I'm just going to have some hummus and pita chips for dinner. And all of a sudden, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, she's not somebody going for record times, but she is somebody that is chronically injured in every joint segment, not just from running, like everywhere and everything. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I'm curious, is there research out there to support that nutrition plays a big role in joint issues, tendons, ligaments, in those types of injuries that we so commonly see in runners.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story that you shared. And I would be curious to hear how her marathon experience went. Um, but yes, there's so much information, there's so much research out there on musculoskeletal injuries in general. I think one of the things we see the most, especially in running and endurance sports, is this mismatch with energy intake and energy output. So we're really looking at energy balance. And what is in some of the research is how low energy availability can lead to this increased injury risk. It's worth noting that sometimes this mismatch in energy balance is because it's unintentional. Sometimes it's intentional. We just don't know. And so thinking, for me, I always kind of think back to like this idea of controlling the controllables. If we aren't aware of energy balance and what our energy needs are, then we don't really have that ability to control some of that. We think we're doing our best. We're eating well, we're fueling our performance, we think, but there could be this total mismatch. So yes, what we do see in research is that low energy availability can lead to some of that. There's also other things that can lead to low energy availability outside of just not eating enough or not having the awareness of what our energy needs are.
I have seen that when people have injury, well, before I say that, runners, when what they are eating, they know they need to eat carbohydrates. They know they do. But runners historically take in way, way, way too little protein. This has been my observation over the years. I've done some macronutrient challenges, and I have them log for like 3 to 5 days so we can see where they're at. And it is normal for a run-of-the-mill recreational runner to be taking in about 12% protein, and that's it on the daily. So I have seen that protein is particularly important when you are injured, like recovering from injury or surgery or a broken bone, or like, can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. In injuries specifically, yes, we do see that protein and especially being anabolic is really important for maintaining that muscle tissue. Depending on the injury or the amount of being sedentary, if you will, that's really important. If someone is not used to higher protein intakes, it could be challenging for sure. I will say, yes, I absolutely love a food first approach, but when we are really jumping into, say, post-op care and that type of rehabilitation, supplements are definitely going to have their place, especially to help support a decrease in atrophy, also signaling that muscle, having that muscle protein synthesis signaling, and really supporting tissue health through that stage. So, yes, protein is important if we can have it on our plate and try to maybe not necessarily think about this like eat more, but right, if that's not helpful. But how are we adding just a little extra here and there? And maybe it's even with looking at our own behaviors around food. Are we eating 3 meals a day? Are we having snacks? Are we fueling the rehabilitation and recovery process just as well as we would our training and, everyday eating in general? And I feel like we could go down a rabbit hole there, Gina, because mindset plays a large role into this too, as far as maybe why someone may not be training and eating enough, why those two might not be coming together. We as humans have a lot of different beliefs and food rules and guidelines that we follow, and some are really supportive of what we're trying to accomplish, and some are not. And so, working to kind of understand some of that and decipher, what's worth continuing to do and maybe what's worth changing. And that's where some of the behavior change skills and tools come into play that I have used with my own clients who are running or cycling to benefit the way that they fuel their performance, but also that recovery and rehabilitation piece if they're in that space of needing to recover from injury.
I 100% agree with the rabbit hole here because as you're speaking, I'm like, oh yeah, this, and oh yeah, that, and oh yeah, this, and oh yeah, that. And those belief systems, a lot of and I work with men and women, and this is a problem of men and women, but just for society, the average American female that grew up in the 80s of the no fat, low fat era and just the chronic dieting and the heavy cardio and all that. I work with a lot of women that grew up like that. And those thought processes that are hard to break. So when you work with your clients, because with me, like my clients know that I have a lot of certifications in education, but there are things that are not my zone of genius. So I don't feel comfortable going all the way there, right? I can get them there, but it's going to be like we're on a moped traveling from one state to the other versus being on a plane from one state to the other when you're dealing with somebody that has a greater knowledge, understanding, background. So do you bring that piece when you're working with your clients? You bring that mindset piece, that kind of ingrained behaviors and thought processes that you bring that in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's I would have to say it's been a game changer for the work with athletes and just anyone really who's looking to just improve health or, even their exercise quality or type. We're human. And as much as we have inspirations in our sport, they're athletes, elite athletes, our lives just look different. We don't have the same 24 hours in a day as those runners do. It's really kind of like maybe in some terms like coming to reality of like what is actually possible and achievable for what time we do have and how we kind of use that time.
We could do 100 of these
Oh
on
man.
all these little micro
Yeah.
topics. And as you're speaking, I'm like, okay, that one, okay, that one, okay, we got to return to that. We got to return to that. So I don't.
Maybe we should.
So
Maybe
that's
we
what
should.
that's what
Yeah.
it's coming down
Yeah.
to. So, you said earlier when I asked about that, I've learned that protein's really important in recovery from injury or surgery. And you use the word muscle protein synthesis. You know what that means. I know what that means. So one of the things, and we're kind of going off topic here, but I think it's really
Yeah.
important, is females my age, because I'm going to be 53, so they've received this message of you need to be strength training. You need to be strength training. I'm going to be honest with you. I was 38 years old and I was at my OBGYN appointment and she asked me, oh, are you training for a marathon? And I currently wasn't.
Oh.
And I said, oh, no, I'm not training for a marathon right now. It hurts me to say this since I'm run with Gina, but she said to me, oh, good, you're not training for a marathon. You need to knock that running shit off and start lifting some weights. So I think women have been getting this message that we need to be maintaining our muscle and our bone through the help of resistance training. But then there's this whole other message that you see a lot. Oh, you got to increase your, like, aside from resistance training, you have to increase your protein. There's all these different formulas, 1 gram per pound of body weight, and then certain governing bodies, their recommendations. But for muscle protein synthesis, you need the two. You need the strength training with you're going to get a different result if you're just doing protein or if you're just doing strength than if you do them together.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Muscle protein.
I would say it amplifies. It definitely
Amplifies, yeah.
will amplify it. Someone can increase their protein intake and they will see benefit from that, even if they're walking or, still active in some aspect. Everyone's different. Let's just put that there. Just to also disclaimer, everyone's different. Everyone's body is going to respond differently to things, but I'm sure that there is a paper out there to show that even protein intake alone is beneficial. Now, when we pair that with resistance training, right, we're just going to amplify that even more as far as the benefits for, our not only performance, but recovery, long-term health, looking at even probably metabolism and other things like that. Yeah, I would say, the pair them together is great. If you're someone who doesn't like strength training though, or maybe is intimidated about it, doesn't know how to approach that, it's worth starting where you can. Maybe it's body weight movements. I might get grilled for saying yoga, but yoga is still like body weight. If that is an introduction for you to moving your body in a way where there is some strength aspect to it, start there. It doesn't always have to look like going into a gym and picking up the barbell or the dumbbells or what have you. There's definitely ways to go around that, which I think is also important to emphasize that, again, we're all different. We're all going to be starting from some different place and coming to this, whether it's eating more protein or actually resistance training. We're going to be coming to it from a different level. So it doesn't have to look the same for everybody.
No one size fits all.
Yeah.
No all or nothing thinking.
No.
No, 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 no. So speaking of protein, when you work with your clients, do you use macronutrients as a tool?
Yeah, it really depends on the client. I think on the back end, we'll always look at what their needs are, whether they are someone who wants to track calories or macros. Not all of my clients want to do that, and that's okay. There's so many other ways that we can be fueling well and fueling enough without actually tracking. But with that said, I think going back to protein, it's still, to me, very individualized. Not everyone needs the same protein intake, whether that's for their sport or phase of life or what have you. It will look different. So there's no one size fits all here. We're gonna look at what your individual needs are, but also where you're coming into all of this from. It wouldn't make sense even for someone who wanted to track to just throw them into 130 grams of protein if maybe their current intake is less than 100. So definitely working through some of that and working to what feels best, but also supports their goals and what they feel is doable.
Mm-hmm. So I've heard, you please let me know if this is true and what it's called, but I've heard there's some sort of like DNA testing you can do to see if your body does best on carbohydrates or fats or proteins. Is this true? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know if I know what you're talking about. I will be
Okay.
transparent. Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of interesting tools out there on the market. I did see something that was, and maybe this is what you're talking about, where you like blew into you like blow into a little
Mhm.
apparatus and it would give you some kind of insight. I actually don't know if that is truly like valid.
Yeah. So what I'm referring to is years ago, probably this could have been 10 years ago. A friend of mine that is a runner has some sort of nutrition certification. I don't know which one. And she told me she took some sort of test that determined that she can perform better on like significantly low fat diet. That's what she was telling me at the time. So it's a long time ago. I didn't know if something really exists like that. I don't know if it was part of the program she was in. I don't know the details, but there are lots of things on the market, but we don't know if they're valid. Those
Yeah,
Facebook ads, those Instagram ads.
exactly. They're targeting somebody. I
Yeah.
think looking at genetics specifically, there is likely in our DNA. Some people may do better with lower fat versus higher fat. Um, how to test for that, I don't know how, I don't know enough about that to really give a good answer or information on that. But I almost feel like maybe somebody would, as a person, if you were experienced, if that was you, like you would maybe figure that out through your own eating. I don't know if that's really intuitive for people.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was interesting when she told me this, but again, this was like a decade ago. I'm getting old, Laura. I'm getting old. I'm pushing 53.
I feel like you're a spring chicken.
Yeah, I don't know about that. So, one last thing I want to just get your opinion on, and you were mentioning energy balance earlier. Over the years, people will say to me, every time I train for a marathon, I gain weight. But then on the other side of the coin, I have people that will tell me I have to sign up for a marathon to train for it because that is the only way I can lose weight.
Mm.
And I actually, just 2 weeks ago, somebody said this to me, one of those statements. I don't want to give this person away by saying which statement it is. So, what do you think's at the root of that? Or is this a mindset thing? Is this just they just don't know what they're taking in or what they're burning or what? Like, what's your opinion? If somebody said to you, I have to sign up for a marathon so that I can lose weight because that's the only way I can lose weight, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting thought. And obviously it's real because someone came to you with this. Yeah, I think I would have a lot of questions. 1,000% mindset plays a role here, but what has this person done in the past? And why is losing weight so important for them? Might be where I would start. Try to understand like the role weight loss has in their life.
Mhm. Yeah, I've told my story many times to people that I've worked with, and that's when I trained for my first marathon, I put on 10 pounds. I put on 10 and people will say, "Oh, it was muscle." I'm on no baby. I saw myself in the mirror. It was not 10 pounds of muscle. It was 10 pounds of soft. But I really wasn't paying attention to anything. I was following a program. I was eating whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Later, in as I progressed as a runner for myself, long before I was run with Gina, I did track what I ate. And I did not gain 10 pounds during training.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was very balanced in my meals and in my nutrition in general. And I excelled at running and I wasn't injured and everything seemed to go smoothly, right? But apparently, some people, when they're asked to track like that, especially if we have the history of the eating disorders, like how do you get around that? How do you help somebody to make sure they're getting what they need to
Yeah.
support their goals.
Yeah. Well, first off, yay that you like figured out,
For me,
what
yeah,
worked
for
for
me.
you after that first one. I just want to say too, like it's not there's a few things in general if we're running and training for running that I've seen where someone might gain weight. And first off, putting on a few pounds when we're training and running can actually be pretty normal. And maybe even like help in your PR. Now, if we're putting on a lot of weight and actually just not really having any thoughts or plans around, what we're eating, is something that I've seen is just this idea that like, oh, hey, I just went out and smashed like 10 miles, so I can eat whatever I want. And that type of mindset and thinking can actually do a bit more harm than good with a performance plan and thus not having a strategy. I suppose the strategy is to just kind of like go off vibes, but I wouldn't recommend that all the time, right? I think that there's a way to work through some of that. We can still have intention, even though we just went and did 10 miles, whether that was like a slow, easy 10 miles or like, some intensity there. It may feel like you can just open the fridge and go for it. But I would encourage anyone who has maybe done that in the past or is currently doing that to have some intention around some of those food choices. And hey, if you want to work together, I can help you bring some intention around those food choices so that it's more supportive to you in your training versus just having a free for all. Now, on the other end of things, like you mentioned, how do we not do some of that? How do we avoid some of that? Right. The question was, how to approach doing that so we know how we're fueling optimally if we aren't actually tracking. So, yes, we can do that in how we build our plate and how we look at our plate, depending on, I like to break this down in what's called performance plates. And there's a different plate and almost like a diagram for how that looks depending on the workout. So it could be a light day, a moderate day, a hard training day. And we can even throw recovery days in there too, as far as like what that plate looks like. It really helps give this visual for how to or how much and of what, breakdowns of macronutrients, but also what foods have micronutrients that we also need for that recovery process, how we build our plate to support those days and those efforts. I just ran a beta program recently where we were working on this exact thing. And it was very successful. And I think it's such a unique tool that isn't used enough. Um, but is so helpful for understanding your fueling needs without the need to track. And I'd say too, it's not even, I mean, it's more than just like what's on the plate too. Like we're also talking about carbohydrates and which ones to have during, you know, pre and post training, but also later in the day too. Really kind of deciphering between those low, moderate, and high glycemic carbs and when they're best. Because as endurance athletes, we need a spectrum. We need whole foods from the earth. We need the packaged foods that are in the store. We really need to live on this spectrum and be eating foods from both ends and in the middle to really support our performance and training and recovery well, and really contribute to energy balance overall.
I like that visual aid idea, and it's taking me back to one of my runners. When he came to me, he told me that he was at a weight plateau and he wanted to lose more weight, and that his work had a nutritionist that you could work with. And she had him take pictures of what he was eating and I don't know for how long, but he sent her pictures of his meals, what he ate, and she told him, "Oh, everything looks fine." Well, he then sent me the pictures when he was telling me, because I'm like, I don't know if you're eating enough. I know you're trying to lose weight, but I don't know that you're eating enough to support what you're asking your body to do. And he says, well, I have these pictures. So he sent me the pictures that he sent the nutritionist. And everything looked, let's call it clean. Everything looked healthy, but the volume wasn't there. What happens? Sorry to put you on the hot seat here, but this is something that comes up a lot. What happens when somebody desire to lose weight, they're in this calorie deficit, but they are not losing weight? What's happening? What's happening when their input is less than their output, but the needle's not moving? What's
Yeah.
happening?
I mean, there could be a lot of things happening. That's a pretty I mean,
It's loaded. It's a loaded question.
it is. It is. There's so many things that could be happening there, and really having more information and detail about the person and what, having some kind of baseline about them and what they're doing, what they've been doing, all of that. It's really hard for me to give a clear answer to that because
You don't know him and his situation, his circumstances, his history. And
I
I
mean,
think,
lactose, yeah, can happen for a lot of reasons. I mean, traditionally, we're dieting, we're cutting calories, things are working, and then they're not. And that can be that shift in metabolism where we're adapting down to that low calorie intake, to which, right, we lower the calories again so that we can start losing again. But I think there is always going to be more to it. Stress plays a really large role into how our bodies function, and high stress and a deficit don't usually, they don't usually play well. And training, high volume, that's stress. So what I'm not saying it's impossible to lose weight by running or, exercising and doing activity, but there's just so much more at play to really fully give a thoughtful answer on that kind of
yeah,
question.
yeah. I actually really like your answer. I think it would be helpful to people because I think there are so many people that I have not just worked with, but that have, come to me and just talked to me about their situation of I'm not losing weight, but I'm like in this calorie deficit. What's going on? And I think they can just be in this calorie deficit and not look at every other aspect of their life, but to have somebody working with you more closely to guide you that way, because there are plenty of people out there that would say, I don't need to work with a nutritionist. Like I can figure this out. I'll just cut my calories. But it when you are plateaued, you need help. You need to look for answers and somebody that can at least help you pull back the layers of the onion
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
to like what's really going on. So with that, I want to thank you for chatting with me today, but I want you to tell the people that are watching how they can work with you, how they can follow you, where can they find you?
Yes. I live on Instagram and in my newsletter. So you can follow me at Laura McQueen Sports Nutrition on Instagram. And you can also join my newsletter through my Instagram as well. So those are the two places I hang out. My newsletter, gosh, I wish I was in there more, but I do like to live there because I get to share more than 140 characters with you. So highly recommend signing up.
There you go. Cool. Are you currently taking people? How are you working with people right now? Are you one-to-one? Do you do does group program even exist? I mean, or is it just one-to-one? It's like, how do you work?
Yeah, one-on-one coaching mainly. I did recently put together a program and I'm making some tweaks to it. So if you are on the newsletter, you will get updates onto when the next round is opening.
You hear that, people? Get on Laura's newsletter. It's super easy to subscribe and super easy to unsubscribe if you don't like what you're reading. Right? I unsubscribe.
Love it.
So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
absolutely. Well, Laura, thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Gina. I appreciate it so much.
I'll see you on Instagram too.